Hi everybody. This is a video I wanted to make to talk about what competency-based education is at Shawnee Community College. And I wanted to quickly just talk about how we have an operating standard that is supposed to actually link up with the curricular design. And I just wanted to quickly run through this to explain to faculty and interested people that this standard is written so that we can actually get these courses approved. So we're supposed to adhere to this standard so that the courses get through. We've gotten one program through. CBE welding's been approved by the Higher Learning Commission, and that's because we both developed a standard and followed the standard in our design of competency-based educational courses. And I think it also kind of just explains what CBE is. And so let's just talk about this. I think I'll do another video later. This is on the website. It actually took me a while to get to it, but if you go to the Administrative Policy Manual, it's under Academic Affairs, Curricular Management, and then it is A2100.70. Okay, so let's just talk about this. First of all, here we have a definition of competency-based education, a program of study that substantially permits students to progress at their own pace, consists mostly of competency-based educational courses, and has been recognized as such by an accrediting body such as the Higher Learning Commission. Okay, so the meat of the definition is going to be here and here, most fundamentally here. The core idea that you want to get with competency-based education is that they are courses that allow students to move at their own pace within the constraints available. So you'll see that, when we do these courses right now, because we're using course-based CBE, course and credit-based, they can't really take a whole year to do a single course. They need to have their courses done by the end of the term. But that's why I put in substantially. We're trying to give students the freedom to move at their own pace, which means three things. They can move faster if they want to. Just keep going. They could move slower if they need to, but again, there are limits. And then finally, if they have an irregular schedule, they could stop and start. It's supposed to be a format that's more amenable to, somebody who has an irregular schedule. This part is going to be important because everything else about CBE I put into the course part of the definition. And then this is just to cover, make it clear that, we're not going to consider it really CBE unless it's been acknowledged as CBE. We might want to amend that later because I don't think we need the HLC to acknowledge programs after our second program. So I'll think about that in the future. But let's go on to this. Okay, so this is really, the best we could get through committee definition. And it captures everything that we really need a CBE course to do to count as CBE for the Higher Learning Commission. So, what we discovered after a lot of back and forth with the Competency-Based Education Network, we can really just say that learning outcomes, and this should be course outcomes. I guess they changed it in committee, but the idea here is that whatever students are supposed to learn at the end of the course, that's basically a competency already. So when you design a course and you're like, at the end of this course, I want students to be able to give a persuasive speech and understand the difference between rhetoric that is aimed at persuading and rhetoric that is aimed at educating and rhetoric that is aimed at making a logical, well-formed argument, right? Okay, well, that's like two competencies right there. And that's just competencies are essentially what the student should be able to do at the end of the course. Now, for curricular reasons, we say a little more. We want to link these competencies to clear performance standards for demonstrating mastery. What that means, essentially, is when you design a competency-based course, not only do you want to explain what the competencies are, like the learning outcomes, right? You also need to explain in the syllabus, what does a student need to do to master that competency? And if you'll hold on a second, I can show you why we need that and how that works. And actually, it's going to be, let me go a little further down in the definition, in the operating standard. We have performance standards defined down here. Performance standards are observable and measurable assessment strategies and criteria. Okay, so these are the two things you need to explain how the competency is going to be evaluated. And that, let me show you on another document that I have. Okay, the assessment strategy, it's just a description of how the student is assessed. It could be as simple as an oral exam, a portfolio, project, written exam, skills demonstration. This is your summative assessment that's going to decide whether the student has the competency or not. And then a criteria, it's either going to be a rubric that outlines how we would score that assessment, or, you know, we've been sometimes saying just a list of the subtopics to be mastered. For example, in our welding program, what we did is, can you see this? So here we have a competency, identify joint types. The assessment strategy, there will be a written test. That means what they need to do to earn this competency is some kind of test. And here's the criteria, which is just the components of the test. They're going to be 4 sections of that test. And they're going to need to be able to pass those 4 sections to earn that competency. Okay? That's basically why. Oh, and why did we do that? Because the software that we use to track all this stuff is WIDS. And let me show you how WIDS works really quickly, because you want to see this too. Here's WIDS down here. Here it is. Okay. Well, you can get into it right now. Just send me an email and say, I want to see WIDS. Okay, here are the competencies, right? And for every competency, we got the criteria. They call it criteria. Okay, that's fine. So we're putting the criteria in here. There's the assessment strategy. So the software is set up to think this way. And that's why we did it. It's a standardized way. We defined competency-based education at Shawnee to fit with this software. We can always change it if for some weird reason we didn't use the software, if they update the software. But there's a reason for all of this. It all kind of fits together. Now let me tell you something else. Another thing about competency-based education, it allows students to progress at their own pace by showing they have achieved the competency. So they're supposed to do a competency, master it, then they can go on to the next competency. 4, awards credit only for high quality performance on carefully designed assessments. We have to include this because it's something that the CRAC specified, that you can only get credit for a competency if performance is very good. They say that explicitly. So we decided that that was going to be very good. Right now, we think that that means like a B or above. So generally, like when we did CBE welding, we said if you don't score an 80%, you can't pass a competency. Let me show you another competency then where it's easier to see how that works. Let me go back to the WIDS or where. Here's a competency that involves skill demonstration. Perform a groove weld on a 2-inch diameter pipe to 2G standard. If I remember correctly, that's like you got to weld a pipe basically with a particular piece of equipment, and you're going to have to do it in an angle. I don't remember what angle 2G is, but it's like upside down or something. We put, you score 80% on the visual test rubric, so there's where we built in an 80%. And then you have to pass all criteria in a bend test rubric. So there's 2 different ways of testing whether a pipe weld holds or not. And so the rubric is, I haven't figured out how to get rubrics into the WIDS yet. And then they have to get all the competencies to earn credit. That's part of the definition of CBE according to CRAC also. This stuff we can't really deviate from. We need this. And if we deviate, the courses, it's not really CBE. Things won't get approved. So that's why we're doing that. As you see, it all fits together like a puzzle. The software, the regulations, the philosophy. This isn't just stuff people are making up for fun. Now here what we did is well-formed competency describes a measurable, observable, valuable skill, moves that enable persons to flourish in the game of life, which we all play to survive and thrive in the modern world. Basic idea here, CBEN, Competency-Based Education Network, lectured us for basically a whole semester in the spring of 2024 about how competencies are supposed to be real world skills. And so they were kind of saying ideally they're real world skills that employers value. And so we put a little bit of a Shawnee spin on that to say that they're just skills that enable you to flourish in life, because the Shawnee, what is it? Our slogan? It's lifelong learning. We value lifelong learning, and so employers might not value lifelong learning as directly as they value things like the ability to make a pipe well. We didn't want to define competency so narrowly that all CBE courses would just be employer oriented. There might be reasons why we want a competency that's a little bit more life oriented. All right, let's stop there. What did we learn in this video? Competency-based education is most fundamentally about letting students progress at their own pace. There are some other curricular requirements that we've built in to our operating standard. And so I wanted you to know why we did this. And I will talk more about the larger framework of how CBE is supposed to work in the second part of this operating standard, maybe in another video. But I hope you learned something, and thanks so much for listening. Until next time, I have been Dane. Have a great day.